Hi guys, it's been a while, but we're here. This is the Knitting Annie podcast. You are watching episode 8. It is Monday, February 9th, 2015, and I am your host, Knitting Annie. Welcome. Thank you so much to those of you who are returning viewers. Thank you to those of you who are new viewers. Welcome to the podcast. I am a podcasting slacker as of late because this is coming to you much later than it normally would. I had been filming every Sunday. I'm hoping to get back to that. So here I am. It is Monday and I just got home from work. I threw my hair up and I said, let's make a podcast because we are way overdue. Not this past week, but the one before that. I actually missed like almost the whole week of work because I was not well. But I'm feeling better now, thank you. And I am here. I am in my very messy fiber room. I'm on my crickety chair, and I have some stuff to show you guys. I have a list of things to go over. We're going to go over who won the fiber from my friend Ellen in Sweden. I'm going to show you some things that I knit, some things that I've spun, and we're going to open a package live on the podcast. So I got in a fleece from a farmer to spin for her. And we'll open that up together and check it out, and we'll go through the process of what happens when you open a box of fleece from a farmer. Excuse me, I'm going to reach for my bottle of water. Water. Trying to get my brain around how to do this podcasting thing again. It's been a long day. I'm fighting off a headache, but that's neither here nor there. You've come to talk about fiber. So welcome. I hope that you're doing well. Thank you to everybody who's said hello and reached out and given me such nice compliments. Thank you. I really appreciate it. It's still kind of funny to get them because I'm still surprised that people are even interested in watching me blather on, but here you are. Let's just get right into talking about the winner. As we have talked about in other podcasts, and as we've been posting on the Ravelry group, there is a Ravelry group. Maybe I should say all that stuff first. So I'm Knitting Annie on Instagram. I'm the Knitting Annie on Ravelry. We have a Ravelry group that I hope you join. Please feel free to start topics or talk about whatever you feel like talking about. I have a blog, knittingannie.com, where you can find the show notes. So everything I blather on about here, you can go find links. And there's a YouTube channel. You are watching this video through YouTube, and if you join YouTube, you can follow podcasters or whoever you'd like to follow, and every time they update, you get a little bloop alert that it's updated and you don't miss anything. So I have my own little profile there. You can follow me, and thank you for those of you who are followers and chat with me on all the various social media. Hello. So anywho, my friend Ellen in Sweden, who I met through a fiber group on Facebook, is having me spin some Gotland fiber for her. And I actually have some that's been washed behind me. Oh my gosh, that is so pretty. I have it raw in the other room. I wasn't anticipating showing it to you again, but might as well, right? So I'm washing it for her, and then I'm going to be picking it and spinning it for her. And look how much lighter. I don't know if you remember seeing this on an older podcast, but it's so much lighter and it's so gorgeous and curly. Let's pull one of the locks out. What I will be doing, I'm actually going to process this completely by hand. So instead of putting it through my picker and having those teeth do the work and then carding it, that's my drum carder behind me. Let's move this out of the way and I'll show you what it does. So you feed the fleece in here, or roving, or whatever it is you want to go on here, and you spin this. Let's see if I can do this without making a big mess. You spin this wheel as you're feeding the fiber in through here, and it cards it. So it kind of brushes it out and puts it on this drum. But I'm not going to do that with this fleece. I am going to pick it by hand. So that's not a picker, that's a carder. A picker has these teeth and it goes back and forth to open up the locks. Instead, I'm going to do this myself each one of these locks, lock by lock in this fleece, I'm going to pick open. And I'm doing this for a couple different reasons. One is because this is such a glorious fiber that I don't want to get any of it tangled and caught in my picker and run risk of tearing it, although I probably wouldn't because this is such a durable fleece. But I also want to make sure, see how in picking it just a little bit, there are still sections where it's still kind of in lock together. I don't want that. I want this to be as open and airy as possible. So I'm going to actually go through even hair by hair and make sure it's all separated. And once that I feel it's sufficiently separated, I am going to hand card it. Instead of using my drum carder, this carding cloth that's on here, and I'm looking around to see if I have any nearby, and I do. I might moon you again. We've done this before. Uh-oh, dropping things. These are not the carders that I will use, but these are what hand carders look like. These happen to be vintage hand carders. It says E.B. Fry & Son, Wilton, New Hampshire, manufacturers. This is a number 8 wool card. I got this when I purchased my vintage Ashford traditional from a lady who had it since the 70s, and she had these carders. And you can see they've been used, not by me. This is a very fine-toothed carder. Carders come in a different tines per inch. I think that's what TPI stands for. And you can get them in like 90, 120. So the more tines it has, it's really for a more fine fiber, kind of like cotton would have a really high tine. But I'm not going to use these. These are not as much functional as they are just cool to have around. I have actually two other, now that I think of it, two other hand carders. And I'll be doing that with the Gotland that I showed you. And hopefully in a later episode I'll show you more of that process and how I make roll-ags out of it and the kind of yarn I spin from it. But anyway, I kind of got off on a tangent there, an unintentional tangent. That happens a lot. So we'll put that aside. So anyway, Ellen, in sending me that fleece, also sent me some other fleeces, or little bits of fleeces for me to try, and she sent me a gift for you guys. And we had a competition. This is scoured fleece from her flock. It is Finlsfor sheep wool, and it's an ounce. It's a little parcel. Don't mind the crinkle. And the winner will be getting this beautiful washed fleece. Isn't that such a gorgeous color? It's a very rich chocolatey brown, very soft. And Ellen has picked the winner from the Ravelry group, and that person is Caro. So my friend Caro from Germany, I'm so excited that you won. Very cool. Caro's been following along on my Instagram, and we became Instagram friends. I don't know what you guys call it. We follow each other on Instagram, and she's also a podcast viewer, a member of the group. So congratulations and hello. I'm also going to be sending you some yarn that I just spun up yesterday. For those of you who follow me on Instagram, you've seen a picture of something similar. I was spinning some alpaca for a farmer, and that's already gone back, so unfortunately I don't have it to show you. You had seen two of the skeins, but this is a similar one to the one I sent back to her, and I'll take this off of here and I'll show you better. Oh, this came up in one of my knitting groups on Facebook. This wooden thing is called a nitty knotty. And what it does, after I spin something, I actually take the yarn and I wrap it around. So you go over one side, down, over, down, and you actually get a really good rhythm when you're winding it on there. You kind of like go in this back and forth motion as you're wrapping it. And this is a 2-yard nitty knotty. What that means is for every single revolution I do around this, I get 2 yards of yarn. They make these in 1-yard versions, which are about half the size of this. They make them even smaller, actually. They're really cute. And I wind it on there, and this particular one has these knobs here, so you can't easily just pull this off. And I mean, I could on this one just because of the way this yarn is. But in general, you don't pull the yarn off the side. You kind of push everything to the center. And then this one has this pin here, and I just pull the pin out, and then this falls down, and it makes it very easy to get the yarn off. This yarn I dyed. Everything here was processed by me from raw fleece and dyed and spun. It's a mixture of blue face Leicester, which is a sheep. So some of the fiber in here is actually blue face Leicester, kind of like the lighter ones that you're seeing, almost like that light green. There's some that are more like a dusky blue color. That's the blue face Leicester. And then these curly bits here are also blue face Leicester, also known as BFL. So if you hear people talking about spinning BFL, or you might see BFL yarn, it means blue face Leicester. And when it has these really tight curls like this, blue face Leicester farmers call it purling, and they spell it the way you would knit, as kind of like a nod to the other part of the fiber community. So I spun this as a single. It was one really long single thread, and as I was doing it, I would spin in these bits of locks here, and then I made a cake out of it. So I wound it much like you would sock yarn into one of those cakes like this. I'll show you this later. And then I plied it against itself by going from the inside of the ball and the outside of the ball, and I got this. And I thought it was pretty cool, and I would show you guys. And I'm also going to send this to Caro with the bit of fiber that she won from Ellen. So thank you so much for participating, and thank you for everyone who participated in the Ravelry group. And that's one last look. Put that aside. Ellen's fiber is Swedish fiber on Etsy. It's spelled Swedish F-I-B-R-E. So please check her out. It was very nice of her to send that little parcel for the winner. What is next up on my list? I have some FOs. I always get so excited because I don't think I finish too many things. But when I was sick, I did a lot of knitting. I've learned that I can basically make a pair of socks in 2 days if really that's all I'm doing. So I did. I finished the socks that I showed you guys in an earlier episode. I think it might have been the last one. I need sock blockers desperately. These are not blocked yet. So this is 64 stitches, some ribbing, basically stockinette, and then every so many stitches was a slip stitch, afterthought heel, and a regular old toe. The afterthought heel is a toe heel. If this has a name, if you could tell me, that would be so awesome, because I'm just calling it a toe heel. So it looks just like the toe does. And I don't remember what this yarn was. Who knows? Maybe it'll be in the show notes. Maybe it won't. And I made this pair out of opal. This is my first time making opal socks, and I really loved it. And it was basically the same thing, just ribbing, 64 stitches, just stockinette all the way through, that kind of toe heel that does leave a hole unless you pick up some stitches and knit them in, or you can sew it up later. And then the same kind of two. And I did this cuff down. Cuff down with my new 9-inch circulars from Chiagu, which are totally awesome. I am so glad I bought the 9-inch circulars. I am so freaking quick using them. And it doesn't strain my hands. It's like, well, I'll show you. I have more socks on the needles. And that's them. This one is not totally woven in. I just have to do 2 more. But it's so funny, in making both of these, I unintentionally, and I guess this happens a lot to sock knitters, I unintentionally made a fairly matched pair here, and the same thing here. I didn't mean to. It just happened. Finished object, so exciting! If I had the ability to edit over like do special music for you guys, I would do that. I feel like in showing you this, something should have like, woo! Something should have gone off in the background like finished objects, that's so cool. All right, that's enough. So, finished object socks. I also have a work in progress socks. I think I may have figured out how to splice this video so I can enter in a picture. If I did figure it out, in just a mere matter of moments, you will see a picture of a sock blank show up. For those of you who are unaware, a sock blank is essentially 2 strands of sock yarn held together and then machine knit into a long rectangle. And then the dyer will get that long rectangle and dye over it so that when the knitter knits from it, you'll have 2 strands that are exactly the same. So when you make socks, it's pretty neat because then they'll be the same. I got this sock blank from a relatively inexperienced dyer that I know on Facebook. Very nice person, but very, very inexperienced with dyeing. And I got it for a steal, so don't get me wrong. I didn't like overpay for it. It was really cheap. And then it was sent to me and I felt it and I'm like, ugh, this is gross. I think it's mostly mohair. It's kind of like, it was kind of like Brillo feeling. And I'm in love with all kinds of wool, all kinds of textures. Usually coarse stuff doesn't bother me, but I mean, it is like so coarse. So I didn't have high hopes. And then I started to unravel some of it and it's not dyed all the way through. And I'll show you. Not that it bothers me. I'll show you in a minute. I'm kind of in love with what is happening now. This is one of the cakes. I think when you knit from a blank, you don't even need to make it into cakes. You can just keep the blank on your lap and then you can knit socks 2 at a time. And as it unravels, you have both strands. I didn't want to do that and I wanted to do this on my 9-inch circs. So I want to say it was last night or was it the night before? Because I did all these, the knitting I'm going to show you, I did it basically in one day. Whatever it was, I enlisted Brad's help and we kind of wedged the blank underneath something and he used my ball winder and I used a toilet paper roll and wound it by hand and we tried to like pull off of this sock blank in tandem and wind it together and it was quite an ordeal. The things I put this poor man through for the sake of my fiber habit. So that's what it looks like. So what happened to make this not dyed all the way through is that she didn't soak the sock blank. And this happens oftentimes when people try and dye hanks of yarn for the first time too. You really need to soak it. I like to do overnight. You need really a couple hours in the acid and water solution. A lot of dyes are acid reactive, so they need that acid in order to adhere, acid and heat really, in order to adhere to the fiber. So she didn't soak it. And sometimes you do that on purpose because you want this kind of an outcome, but I don't think she did it on purpose. I think she just didn't realize it. So I'll insert the sock blank picture somewhere. Maybe I'll tell myself here and do fancy jazz hands so I know that's where to stop the video and put the picture. So if I did that correctly, you just saw a picture of the sock blank. And she made these like splotches on there, like circles, and she didn't soak it first, so I didn't get a very even yarn. You can see how there's kind of blue sections and then white. But I'm actually quite pleased with the way it's knitting up. Here is the other ball, and this is what's happening. It's a lot softer now that it's not in the blank, but it's still a very coarse sock. And I think because it looks like ramen noodle, because I pulled it right out of the blank and didn't put it on my nitty knotty and soak it and make it straight again, it's making the sock this like funky texture. It's almost a shame it's not going to stay like that because I think the texture is really cool. But once I get this wet and block it, it'll be pretty much normal. And I wasn't expecting it to have this kind of patterning. I knit the cuff, and then it started to kind of spiral the purple around, and I just love it. I think that's so cool. These are the 9-inch circs, and there goes the yarn. Oh, I got it. Eek! Making a mess. So, when I knit with these, I knit continental. I don't know if I could maybe knit a little bit so you can see the way I knit. You guys remember on Instagram when everybody was posting the hashtag how I knit? If not, look up that hashtag and make your own how I knit. And then people started saying how I purl, and then people did how I spin. I am a continental knitter. Oh, what happened there? Oh, I thought I dropped something and I got nervous. So I knit like this. It's pretty quick. And with these 9-inch circulars, you barely even have to hold on to them. It's a lot easier when my elbows are resting. I have found that I am the type of knitter that likes to keep my elbows propped up on arms. It's kind of weird to hold it this high up and knit. And I'm not very good at not looking. So when I knit and watch television, I'm not really watching television, I'm watching my knitting and listening to the television. So that's that. This is where I put in the heel. How come I didn't know about afterthought heels? I thought socks were so hard with all the gussets and picking up stitches, but you don't have to do that with an afterthought heel. Why do we even do it the other way? Had I known about this sooner, I would have been knitting socks like a lunatic. And now I am knitting socks like a lunatic. So I did this pretty much yesterday. I will have a finished object to show you the next time we talk. So that is that. I'm looking at my notes here. When I was sick, I got really depressed because I was sick for so long, and then I went to like 4 different doctors, and I was on medication and all kinds of crazy stuff. And towards the end, Brad said to me, you really should get out of the house. And I'm like, I don't want to go anywhere. I just want to live here and just die because it was so depressing. And he said, how about we go to that yarn store that you like? And I was like, okay, that changes things. Let's go. I think I feel better now. So we went out to that yarn store, and he sat in the car. I don't really expect him to come in and help me find yarn. Sometimes he does, but sometimes it's just like weird and uncomfortable for him, especially if it's a really little store, and this happens to be a very little store. So he sat there and was like, go in, have fun, feel better. And I went in. I picked up these 2 balls of opal yarn to make Brad's socks. I think on the camera they're looking a little bit more purple. They're not purple at all, actually. They're a blue color. And opal doesn't put a picture on there of what the pattern will look like, I guess. Opal, oh, it does. Can you see that or no? I wonder if he's going to think it's too girly. If so, while I'm knitting it, I'll have him check it out, and if he thinks so, then I'll just make myself 2 pairs of socks. I had to get 2 balls, though, because he's got such large feet that I was afraid I'd run out with one. What is this stuff called? Mouchellin. – 75% wool, 25% polyamide. Either way, I know that I like opal now after making my lovely socks, and I plan on continuing with it. So that was one acquisition. And then I kind of squealed when I saw it because I've been looking everywhere for this book in person. This book went viral on Facebook in a couple of my knitting groups, and it was for one particular pattern. This one woman was knitting this scarf, and everybody wanted the pattern, and it went nuts. It got like 1,000 likes. It was insane. It's amazing how that kind of stuff happens. It's called 60 Quick Luxury Knits, and this is by Cascade. In this book is this one pattern, and I'll show you the picture. It's kind of a faux cable. Very hard to see just from this angle. It's called Mock Cable Scarf. And if you're my friend on Ravelry, I'm going to put it in my project somehow. However we do that there. I'm not very Ravelry proficient, as you may know. Should be really easy. And I picked up got so much fiber in here that if I go to pick up yarn, I have yarn stuck to it and then like bits of random sheep fleeces attached. I picked up Cascade Venezia worsted, and it's merino and silk. The type of ply, I think this is called a crochet ply. It almost looks like it's woven. And it is so squishy and soft. It's really amazing. This had a name, and I bought the wrong color because I wanted the same color as the one in the book, which I think was pink sapphire. And I bought this thinking it was the pink sapphire, but it's not. I could swear you have a name. Okay, who knows? It's some sort of pink. I think it's a good color for me. And it feels so soft and nice. I have to tell you, all of you guys who are making the scrappy yarn blankets with the little squares, the more I see you make these blankets, the more I need to make a blanket. So kind of sitting on my hands with that one because I have enough going on clearly. But it may be coming. So I got those things, which was very nice. And what next? Finished objects spun yarn. I spun some yarn. Remember that loop? Well, maybe now that I know I can do these fancy things like inserting pictures, if I successfully did it before, I could potentially do it again. So I will wave to myself. So silly. The loop bullseye bump that I had spun. Some of you guys saw that on Facebook. I posted it underneath, I think, the last podcast on knittingannie.com. So if you happen to look in the show notes because you don't have Instagram and you want to see that, you can see the single. And I plied it into a 2-ply yarn. Where did I put it? Oh, it's right here in front of me. Duh. I intentionally over-plied it because I wanted the finished yarn to be extra kind of bubbly. I don't know if that's the right word. I wanted to make sure it was a nice tight ply. I didn't know what I'd be making with it. I thought maybe socks, but now I think it needs to be some sort of a shawl, something around my neck. I really wish you could see it in person. I'm so happy with it. Right now, the hank is a hot mess. I need to cut the ties off of it. After I spin something and wind it on the Nitty Knotty, I put these ties in it, kind of like a figure 8, or if it's a real thick hank, if it's got a lot of yarn in there, I'll make, you know, a figure 8, like back and forth and back and forth. It's kind of like a figure infinity. So I would do that, but in washing this after I spun it, I was a little bit rough on it and I ended up breaking some of the ties, so the yarn is kind of just hanging out. I'm really hoping that when I make it into a ball, it's not all knotted. But maybe I can put it back together again, show you a picture. Not show you a picture, show it to you closer so you can get the picture. Oh man, those colors are awesome. This lighting is not the best for it, but it's like, how awesome is that? All of the purples and the greens and the yellow and this cranberry color. It's just, who knew? When I was spinning it, I was not in love with it. It's always that case with me. I'm spinning something and I think, oh, this is not going to come out great. And when I'm done, I'm like awestruck and in love with it. She did a great job putting the colors together and dyeing it and blending it. And then when I washed it, there was like absolutely no runoff. None of the colors bled. It washed really well. And that's that. I don't think it's quite worsted. It's lighter than that. Maybe it's a DK weight. I didn't put it, I didn't wrap it to see how many wraps per inch it was. But I'm thinking it needs to be something very simple. Maybe something that's all garter or all stockinette. We'll see. If you have any suggestions, by all means, I'm around. Let me know. That's a finished spinning object. And then I want to show you to be spun. We are moving along swimmingly, which is great because I haven't yet had dinner. And I think I may finish up pretty quickly with you guys. Have some dinner, have a cup of tea, do some knitting, and relax. Okay, so a farmer contacted me on Facebook. I happen to meet a lot of farmerly people on Facebook. Hello, if you are watching, and that's where I met you. I feel so corny today. Oh, I'm sleepy. Okay, so she has Jacob sheep, and for those of you who have seen it, or would like to go back through my Instagram or wherever, I had shown you a hat, a sockhead hat that I made for Brad out of spun Jacob wool. Jacob comes in white and black spots. Sometimes the black spots are not black, but they're kind of like a grayish color, and those are called lilac. And I wrote down some notes about Jacob sheep before we open this box. So anyway, she sent me this fleece. I'm going to spin some of it for her. I'm going to keep some of it as my payment. And that's that. When I take on a contract from a farmer who's not paying me money, but is paying me by paying me in fleece, I'm very particular about what I get. I only do it if that's a fleece that I really want to have. I want it to be a fleece that I would enjoy spinning. Jacob is one of my favorites. And I also only accept contracts where I agree with how I feel the fleece should be spun. So if she sent this Jacob to me and she wanted it, I don't know, spun lumpy bumpy in a art yarn with big fluff balls hanging off of it, I wouldn't have done it. I'm sure you can do it. It might look really cool if you do it, but it's not what I would have wanted to do with it. So, you know, she said she wants something very even spun, which is fine. That's easy to do. And she wants something fairly thin, which will be fine with the Jacob, and it's going to come out really nice. I think she wanted something 12 wraps per inch or less, which is not going to be a problem. Sorry, not going to be a problem at all. And I really look forward to it, and we'll open that up together in a second. As I was opening it up just before, Brad's like, what are you doing? Open up a box? And I said, yeah, and both of us at the same time were kind of like, why don't you do it on the podcast? That would be pretty cool. So, Jacob sheep are perhaps 3,000 years old. The history on the Jacob is not totally known, but it's a very old breed of sheep. It's a polycerate, meaning it's a sheep with multiple horns, but unlike other polyserates, they differ because their fleece is a medium fine fleece, and they have no outer coat, whereas the others will have an outer coat and an inner coat, the outer coat being a more coarse coat and the inner coat being more fine. Jacob fleece doesn't have that. Let's see. It's a slender, small sheep. If you've ever met them, they're pretty cool looking because they have these horns. Usually, well, they can go in any direction, but they usually come down like this on one horn. The other horn will come up and curl, and they'll have that same thing on the other side. And sometimes they get kind of like crazy where the horns are going in wacky directions. My friend Rebecca in New Jersey has them, and my friend Anne in upstate New York also has them. And I got to go to one of her shearings where her Jacob were like running wild. She has Wensleydales, she has Jacob, and she has alpaca. And that day we were there for a sheep shearing, and the Wensleydales were so well behaved. They're a really big sheep though. I mean, like you go to shear them and it's like this massive creature on the ground. But the Jacobs were like pissers. They were just running all over the place. They didn't want to be caught. They didn't want to be bothered. They were like, one of the rams was like really nasty and wanted to like attack the shearer. It was really interesting. My friend Rebecca, though, also has Jacobs in New Jersey, and I find that her crew is a little bit more relaxed. I don't know why that happens. I guess different personalities like people. And if you go really far back in my Instagram, I show a picture of me holding a baby Jacob from a couple of years ago, I want to say from Rebecca's farm. It was so cute. And it was really interesting because when it was born, the black spots were much shorter than the white spots were. It was a much different texture just right out of, you know, birth. It's very interesting to see. So these are a very hardy sheep. They are very easy to keep because they're so hardy. They're good mothers, all around an easy sheep to have on hand. And their meat, if you're a sheep eater, is a very lean meat that has a nice flavor. And the fleece is particularly nice. So let me put this list down. Put my water there, and I'll show you this box. Pardon me for a second as I reach. Sheep fleece has been sent to me in all different ways. One of the worst ways that ever happened to me, this lady sent me some, actually it was Jacob, and it was like the worst fleece ever. I couldn't even use it. I had to tell her it was unusable, and then she wouldn't give me a refund. I offered to send it back at my expense. It was just like such a mess. Those experiences, for me at least, have been few and far between. So I buy so much fleece. It's a terrible addiction, but I haven't had too many problems with things not being as described. But this one lady sent me this Jacob fleece, and I had it sent to my job. And not too far from where I was working at the time, there was this environmental lab. So she sent it in a clear garbage bag, and there wasn't even a proper label on it. It just had like duct tape and a piece of paper that had the address scribbled on it. And it accidentally went to this environmental lab because they thought it was one of their testing specimens. So they realized it wasn't, and someone recognized my name, and they brought it to my job. And this guy came in with this bag of fleece, and he was like, what is this? And in shipping, this hard fleece that was like filled with poo. When you buy fleece from farmers, it's generally skirted, and if it's not skirted, it generally doesn't have like all kinds of crap in it. But this had all like manure in it, and all kinds of VM and like burrs and hay, like everything was in there. And because it was shipped in a clear garbage bag, it had all these holes in it, and like all this crap was falling out of the bag. And he was like, why would this be shipped to you? What are you doing with this? So I had to explain to him that I was a spinner and this was a sheep fleece or whatever. And he's like, oh, it smells like the zoo. No wonder why they thought it was one of our specimens. So anyway, that's my funny story. But fleece gets shipped to you in all different kinds of ways. This lady shipped this in a priority mail box. Sometimes farmers will actually use feed bags, because some of the feed bags that they use now are very tightly woven plastic. And if you suck all of the air out of a fleece and really bind it, you can get it very thin actually, and it can go in these bags. And it makes it more cost effective, I think, to ship it. This probably cost her more than it should have. She probably could have shipped it cheaper. This went priority. Oh, you know what? It wasn't that bad. I take it back. It looks like it only cost her like $7. This was coming from New York though, and I'm in Connecticut, so it's not that far. So you can see the box is bulging. There is a big, lovely fleece in here. I forget how much it weighs. According to the box, this says 5 pounds, but I don't think it's 5 pounds. I want to say that this was like a 3.5 pound fleece. I'm not sure. So we will open this together. It's kind of exciting. So you can see I opened up the top, and she taped this probably because it was bulging from the fleece. And we'll cut that. Set that down there. It was like up close and personal. Hi. So we're gonna open this. Smells sheepy. And looks like there's a note here. Barb. This sheep was named Barb. Pull this out. Oh, it's really packed in there. It's already starting to expand. Come on, Barb, work with me. Oh, it was kind of stuck on the bottom with some tape too. So that means I tore that bag. Now, it's already expanding, and it was in that little box, and now it's this huge, big ball of fleece. I find that so amusing that this massive, squishy, airy bag is shoved into that tiny little box, and it's still taking on more air. Let's hold up the box for some sort of comparison. So this is the box, and this is the big fleece that came in there. Barb is a black and white Jacob. And let's see what else is in here. So that's her name. Oh, it smells great. Sometimes when you open up a fleece, if you don't know that it's a ram, rams have a different odor, kind of like the males in many different species. They're kind of musky, and especially if they're not, what is the right term when they, you know, fix the bits of a sheep? Wethers? Anyway, when they're not neutered, sometimes they smell even worse. But this is a ewe fleece, so this came from a chick sheep. There's a note in here somewhere. And this says her name, what she's looking for. She wants a 2-ply balanced yarn, wraps per inch of 12 or more, meaning she wants it thinner. And that's that. I'll give you her farm information either at the end of this in the show notes or later on as I process this for her. I think she's given me 3 months to do the processing. I have so much else going on. I told her I needed some time. But let's take a peek here. So you can see this bit here is a very short staple length. In general, you're not going to find Jacob with a really, really long staple length, but that's fairly short. So maybe that came from, I want to say closer to the neck or the legs. Because to my knowledge, as this was posted, it was fairly long for a Jacob. And I'll pull some of this out. She's going to want me to do random splotches of the white and the black. In some areas it's going to be a little gray. Oh, it smells great. I'll pull out another chunk here. This is some of the black. Very nice texture, very nice crimp. The crimp there are all those little crinkly bits. It's very, very soft. So this is much longer than the other piece that I just pulled out for you. When you're spinning, you have to be mindful to try and keep everything that you're spinning together closer to the same length. If you don't, then over time it can affect how that yarn wears. So sometimes it's even worse when you're mixing two different things together all together. So like if I were doing alpaca with this and the alpaca was like 2 inches and this Jacob was 4 inches, over time the alpaca might start working its way out of the Jacob and it may make a yarn that sheds. So if you look at this, we'll just grab 2 bits here. That's a very short bit and that's much longer. Likely this will not go into any finished yarn. And then what we talked about, she asked me if I could make dryer balls. I don't know if you guys have seen those, but they're oh, excuse me, there's a hiccup. Dryer balls are basically balls that are like the size of my hand that are felted wool. You can make them in your washing machine. You can make them with yarn. You can make them with fleece like this, prepared fleece, whatever, so long as it felt. So superwash wouldn't work. And the intention is that after you're done making them, you throw a few of them in your dryer when you're drying clothes, and it helps not only aerate the clothes, but wool absorbs water, so it helps you in drying. So she asked me if I'd be able to make some. And I told her maybe. It depends on if my washing and dryer machine system here works. I've done them before in the past, but when we moved to Connecticut, we have very efficient washer and dryers, and I don't know that they would necessarily do that. So I'm going to try that. And then bits like this that are too short that I wouldn't want to work into yarn that's this long, I may incorporate in the dryer balls. So we'll see. Or if there's a great section of this that is the short length, then I'll make a few different skeins for her where some are made with the longer ones and some are made with the shorter ones. It all depends on how big of a difference there is between the lock length. So sometimes farmers will roll a fleece when they ship it to you. And if you go to fiber festivals and things like that, oftentimes they're folded in a particular manner. I don't exactly remember how that's done. It's almost like when you're folding a t-shirt at home though. And it helps keep everything very neat. And then when you unroll it, you understand what part of the fleece it is you're touching. So you can see that that's part of the back, and as it's going down towards the legs, you can see that. This particular fleece is not like that. It's not a bad thing. It's not a good thing. I don't mind. And I can pull some of it out so you can see it. It's gorgeous. It's very crimpy and very nice. There's not a lot of veggie matter in here, so there's not a lot of bits of hay or straw. It's not a crazy amount of lanolin. It's going to wash really easily. And I can already tell it's incredibly soft. Let's pull out some more from the bottom and just make sure everything looks good. Here's the section that has a bit more veggie matter in there. Very hard to see though. See that little bit here? So that's a little bit of hay or whatever. Keeping in mind these are sheep. They live in the elements as they should, enjoy their sheepy lives. I'm quite pleased with this. And in reaching down, we'll grab another bit that's kind of dark so you can see that too. Very floofy. This is called a second cut. this will not get incorporated into yarn at all. So I'll go through very meticulously and I'll pull these bits out. A second cut is a pass that the shearer made twice. So perhaps when they were shearing this, we'll use this as an example and we'll pretend that this was down here attached to that. So he was shearing this bit, and it's this very long bit, and he went along and he went zoom, and now you have this. So he sheared that off, and that's great. That's a nice staple length. But this little bit here was still stuck on the animal. So to make sure the animal got a proper shearing, and maybe he didn't want the animal to have all these lumpy, bumpy bits all over it, he went back for a second pass. And this is called a second cut. So that one lock was on there. The first cut he went zoom, and that was left. And then he went back later and he went zoom, and that's a second cut. And that was in the bag. Not uncommon. Even the most experienced shearers are going to have some second cuts. Some very inexperienced ones will have more than others. I actually received a fleece once where it was completely cut in half. So he like did half the lock and then went back and did it again. It was like, ugh, what a mess. But this one looks really good. There's not going to be a lot of that, but I will remove all of that. If you leave this in there and during the process, like let's say I carded it. Let's say I picked it and then I put it on here. Leaving all of these bits in there will cause something called neps, which I've shown you in other episodes. But it'll make like these tiny little balls. It's just not pleasant to have in yarn. And then if you do leave it in your yarn and you manage to spin it in, just like what I was talking about with the smaller fibers working their way out of the yarn, this will work out as well. And it's going to shed and it'll pill on your garment. We don't want that. But I'm not going to throw it out. This will be good to use in those dryer balls. And then sometimes with extra fibers and fleeces and little bits that I have, I make these little nesting balls for birds. You guys know that I love the wild birds so much. But I make these little nesting balls, and then during the spring, and actually it's coming time to put those out again, they'll grab little bits here or there and they'll use it in their nest. It's really neat to walk around in the spring and see the little nests with little colorful pieces of yarn and string. Thank you for sharing this experience with me. This is a lovely fleece, and I'm glad you guys were here for that. So I told her when I process it, I'm going to be very cautious in how I process it. I really want to have the nicest fibers used. I don't want to card in all those little bits and things like that, so I'm going to be very meticulous in picking those out. And instead of using my carder, which is more of a rough kind of way to do it, I'm going to use these combs here. These are 2-pitch combs, so they have one tine there and one tine there. They are super duper 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 sharp. Very, very pointy. And the wire they use, this part of the tine here, where it comes to a point, is very smooth, which is very important on these. So you don't want it catching on the fleece and ripping it. And what you do, I don't know that I have anything in any stage of preparation to show you, but you put the fleece on here. I like to do it while it's still in lock form, and then you basically get this and you go alongside here. In a future episode, I'll show you how these are used, but you comb like this and comb like this until there's no more fiber on here. What'll be left are little bits of like small bits and like VM can get stuck in there, but short fibers will get stuck. And then you turn it around and you do it again and again and again, back and forth from one comb to the other, until you have this bit of fluff here. And then you pull it off, and you pull off basically a top, which is fibers that are aligned all in a row. And as you get to the bottom, you'll have some short bits left on the end. And then you can decide as a spinner, do you want to use those short bits while you're spinning, or do you want to discard those? Doing this will have the most waste, but it will have all of the best fibers retained in that piece of fluff you pull off, so that the final yarn you're spinning is a very fine yarn that's got the longest, strongest, most beautiful strands that are in that fleece. So I told her I would do it this way. She's going to have more waste this way, but she's going to have a finer end product. Otherwise, I could have just picked it on my picker and then processed it through my carder, and she would have had more yarn this way, but it wouldn't be as fine of a yarn. There would be nothing wrong with it. It would be absolutely lovely. So my portion, I'm probably going to card it this way because I don't mind having these little bit, you know, fluffier neps in there and things like that. but her yarn is going to be much more precise, and it's going to have those fibers all aligned. And it's also going to make a much different end product, so that yarn itself, I think the best way to describe it is going to be a finer yarn. Not necessarily thinner, but finer in quality. There's different kinds of these you can buy. I'd recommend going with professional makers if you are going to buy combs. I bought some from a lady that makes them online, and they're probably the worst things I've ever used as far as fiber equipment. And I think I paid $60 because I wanted to save money. I don't remember. These are 100 and something, 175. It's well worth spending money and saving the money to get something proper like these than to blow $60 on something that just stinks. So I don't even know what I'm going to do with it. At first I was like, oh, maybe I can put it in a D-stash group or something, but I'd feel bad like charging somebody for these things because they don't work at all. So go for the good ones. I probably could have gone for ones that were even better than this, but these got a pretty good review. Later on, if I feel like getting more combs, maybe I'll de-stash these and then get another set. Oh, I can show you this little bit. This came off of these combs. This was a fleece that somebody was giving away, and this is what I pulled off. This is Dorset. I pulled this off of there. Not a particularly good fleece. This the sheep was really being used for training dogs, you know, herding dogs. So I popped that on there and I pulled off this very springy. Wow, it's so springy. These would make really good socks. I wonder if I have any of this left. Anywho, a very springy bit of fiber that I could spin from that came off of those combs. Okay, you guys, I'm sure I'm forgetting things, but I have to have dinner. So I'm going to go wash up. I'm going to get into my PJs. And I'm going to eat dinner on the couch, and then I'm going to sit there and veg out and knit. Thank you for joining me. It's been a pleasure talking with you as always. I really appreciate everybody watching and liking and faving and making comments on YouTube. I really appreciate it. And thank you so very much. I will see you guys on Sunday. Bye.